Welcome back to Misha Dianne, What's Santa Barbara?
Hello.
It's Friday, January 4th, 1985, and I'm still in Hawaii. Yay! So another episode that I would have missed, because I would have been taking the bus to Waikiki.
And this was an action-packed episode.
Yes, we had a lot of exciting things happen. It started out with Peter Flint, who we haven't seen in about a week or so. Didn't find out about his Christmas, but not as bad as Sally. We still haven't found out if she survived the earthquake.
Yeah.
The doctor is checking Peter's eyes, and he says that he had a lot of trauma as a result of his death and subsequent deprivation of oxygen. He says his response to certain stimuli is abnormal, but Peter's pretty anxious to get out of there. He mentions having blackouts, but that he wants to be treated as an outpatient. He doesn't want to hang around there.
Yeah.
So he, starts getting dressed, calls Kelly so that he can go visit her right away. She pretty much says she does not want to meet him.
Yeah.
Rock.
He throws a tantrum, we should say, as soon as he hangs
That's
up.
true. He throws the phone down.
Yeah, so this
tears
is
it out, throws it onto the
kind
floor.
of a bad sign of what his mental health condition is like after this injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he actually says he feels different after everything that's happened to him.
Yeah.
So, Veronica comes to visit. Peter does take a short, he starts to leave and then notices a little girl in a wheelchair. So he goes back and grabs the flowers from his bedside and gives them to her. And just as Veronica shows up and tells the girl she's very lucky to have parents because he didn't have any.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica was just hoping for a visit, but didn't realize Peter was checking out, and he's like, "Oh, we should go for coffee," and she's like, "Oh no, I have a date tonight." So he says, "Oh, I just wanted to thank you," but the entire time he's subconsciously clenching his fist.
Yeah.
And later, after Veronica leaves, he realizes that his palms are bleeding where he's been clenching his fists. So he goes and shows up at Joe and Kelly's place. And only Joe was there, but he says, "Oh, I have these letters I want to return to Kelly." Now, this reminded me of when Joe was trying to return letters to Kelly.
Yeah, a little bit of a callback
So
to that.
I'm wondering if Peter is, purposely even trying to repeat that with Kelly, thinking, "Oh, that worked for Joe eventually."
Maybe.
So I think he's still thinking of getting back with Kelly somehow. I feel like that's still in his head.
Yeah.
Joe says, "No one wants to see you, Peter." So Joe ends up going to La Mesa now. It's not clear to me if... Sorry, Peter goes to La Mesa. It's not clear if he knows that Kelly works there, because wasn't someone trying to find out where Kelly worked a few weeks ago and people were trying to hide it from him? Oh, that might have been Mason. So he goes to La Mesa, and Veronica's eating there alone, so she clearly didn't have a date, and luckily for her, Peter doesn't see her, and she quickly sneaks out.
Yeah.
So he doesn't spot her. Barbara and Kelly are both working there, wearing the same pink waitress outfits.
So Barbara's a new character.
Mm-hmm.
We
Another
still
new
don't
character
know
this week.
where Sally is, but Barbara is a waitress at La Mesa, and she apparently has just landed in town. So
yeah, she mentions, "Oh, Kelly, you can leave early because you've got something exciting to go home to, unlike me." And Kelly says, "Oh, I'm sure something exciting will happen for you very soon." Or does Barbara say that?
And given the way Peter's kind of looking at her during this episode, I do have some concerns that the exciting thing that might happen to Barbara might not be very pleasant.
Peter Flint. So Kelly never spots Peter, but he's looking at her and he orders coffee from Barbara, and his hand starts shaking as he drinks it. So he's got some neurological problems.
Yeah.
He pulls a picture of Kelly out of his wallet and is watching her and looking at the photo, and he tears it up. And he says, "She's so beautiful. She belonged to me once." So that doesn't sound as stable as one would hope.
We keep seeing, he's looking at Barbara, but it's superimposed on the image of Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So
he starts fantasizing that she is Kelly, or hallucinating that she is Kelly after Kelly goes home. So So that's how things end there. He orders some grapefruit juice from her.
Yeah.
That's the last thing we see.
And it's late at night.
Yeah, they're closing in 5 minutes.
Just closing,
the kitchen's closed,
So Peter's sending off some pretty sinister vibes this episode, I would say.
As is the background music.
Yeah.
It's a very creepy music playing over some of Peter's scenes.
Yeah.
Now at the Lockridge house, Augusta finally tells Lakin about the affair, because she's not managed not to read any of the newspapers or heard about the trial, but she knows something's
Now remember,
related.
This is also the age before the internet,
Mm-hmm.
so unless this information was publicized, it is possible that some of the hearing hasn't been entirely publicized. But it's not like she would have the information right at her fingertips if she hadn't seen it in the newspaper or caught it on the news.
Mm-hmm. So Lakin says, I don't know, can't imagine this affair going on for years, but Augusta kind of confirms that it did. And Augusta says something interesting. I don't know what Cece would have done if Channing had told him. Probably would have killed him on the spot. Sophia had the power to bend men's minds. Now this is interesting because Cece's been threatening to kill Mason several times lately.
Yeah.
And, we still don't know who killed Channing, and suddenly Augusta says if Channing had told Cece, he would have killed him on the spot. So up until this point, I haven't really thought of Cece as a good potential suspect for killing Channing, but here he's now behaving very badly towards Mason and threatening him, and this is another possibility, actually.
Now, we would have to think that if Cece were to do something like that, it would be like temporary insanity or something that he would have to have been so far out of his mind, because he does seem to be genuinely anguished over Channing's death and genuinely completely puzzled by what actually happened to him. There's no sense of him covering up something like this.
Could he have done it and blocked it from his mind somehow?
Yeah, like a blackout or something.
Ted has a brief car accident, which is not really relevant to the rest of the plot. He eventually makes it to Lakin's.
I think this does show his anguished state of mind, because he's really upset. Eden told him that he should talk to Lakin before Augusta, and we know that Augusta beat him to the punch. But he's got that in his mind, and so he's desperately been trying to phone Lakin, and he jumped in his Jeep and went out in a rainstorm to try and talk to her, and as a result ended up in an accident.
Now he shows up around the same time as a police officer who basically tells Augusta they've lost track of Lionel and he better show up for his 9 a.m. court date or he'll be considered to have jumped bail. And Augusta says, well, he'll be there because he's innocent, so don't even worry about it. So Ted goes up to talk to Lakin and asks if she still believes in her father. And she says yes. So he goes, well, then I guess I do too. And she's like, I don't want you to believe him just because I believe him. I want you to make up your own mind. So she's a little bit annoyed at his thing. But I mean, Ted's in a hard position, really.
He is.
And he does mention that the policemen think Lionel may have skipped bail. So that doesn't really help. And speaking of Lionel, he's just managed to avoid being stabbed by Sophia. And he sees her face, and she tries to cover it. And he realizes, oh, this can't be Sophia. It's this master of disguise here with another disguise. He says, you can't be Sophia because she had a birthmark on her wrist. And he pulls her wrist, and there's the birthmark.
Yeah.
So then he realizes it's Sophia and that she was Dominic and that she did all this to him. So he takes her to his room and he threatens her weirdly several times. Says, I'll kill you if you don't stay in this room or whatever. It's like very bonkers because she's already thinking he's going to kill her.
Well, I think what we get a little bit with this whole scene. It's not just one scene. It really goes on a, we keep seeing bits of it throughout the episode, is sort of the volatility and, I guess, when things were good, passion between Lionel and Sophia, because both of them several times throughout this episode threatened to kill each other. And yet they're both crying and talking about how much they had loved each other, too.
So she says, oh, you had the murder in your eyes, you pushed me off the boat, and then the boat came around and you came to run me over, and she shows him the scars on her stomach from that. And then she says she woke up on the shore and she didn't know who she was. Mm-hmm. So this is interesting. And then she also says she then subsequently woke up in an asylum in Europe. Mm-hmm. Didn't know how she got there. So obviously, would have had some head injury, possibly from being hit by a boat. Also, obviously she made it to shore, so she didn't drown, but may have, inhaled some water, had some oxygen deprivation or something from that. So, so her early time is still a mystery, not just to us, but to her too.
Yes.
Those early times before or after she fell off the boat. So, she says, for 15 years, I've missed my family because of you. Missed holding my family. So she blames him for that. Then we meet Marcello, finally. Mm-hmm. He is waiting in Sacramento. He has a note from Sophia saying to meet him there. Don't come to Santa Barbara. Meet me in Sacramento. So he waits on the platform, and of course Sophia doesn't disembark, so he gets on and asks the conductor if he's seen this woman, and he said, no, I haven't seen this woman on the train. So it's interesting that Marcello doesn't know that she would be disguised as Dominic, so it's interesting. Yeah. Because he's clearly our best suspect for her accomplice all those months ago.
Yes, that's
knocked
right.
Joe on the head. So
that's right.
The fact that he doesn't know she's dressed as Dominic is confusing. So he just tries all the staterooms. He does open Sophia's, but it's empty. And then he knocks on Lionel's and shows Lionel the photo and says, have you seen this woman? And Sophia, by this point, doesn't have her gag on anymore and recognizes Marcello's voice and calls out Marcello, and he bursts in and sees her tied up. Yeah. Immediately starts fighting with Lionel, and they fight their way into the hallway, into the area between cars, and they're pushing each other back and forth, and suddenly Lionel ends up falling off the train.
Yes.
Marcello looks out, looks down, and I guess sees Lionel on the tracks or beside the
we've
tracks.
had two characters
apparently fall off the same train. That conductor is going to have like a bad review this year. Yeah. Two people fell off your train.
Though Dominic just gave the appearance of it because, Sophia got back on pretty quickly.
But that conductor did report it.
Yeah.
Did have to report someone pulled the emergency cord.
So I'm thinking that Lionel is unlikely to make his date in the morning. If he's up, I imagine, wandering
in the desert
east of Sacramento, which is quite some ways from Santa Barbara. I don't think he will be making it back in the morning, and I think he's going to end up in prison and looking quite guilty, at least for a while.
Yeah, I can't imagine. He has no money. Yeah. Now he's in the desert. He'll have to walk back to Sacramento. I guess that's not too
probably, we don't know the conditions of his bail or if they were mentioned. I don't remember them, but he probably wasn't really supposed to leave Santa Barbara.
But the good thing is he didn't cross the state line yet, so.
Yeah, as far as we know. And it does occur to me, watching this episode, we have 3 characters in this episode who have possible head injuries that are affecting their thinking and perception and behavior. We have Kelly, of course, who she's not having headaches right now, but we know that she was badly injured in the earthquake, and she has been having episodes on and off ever since then. Of course, we have Peter, who almost died during the gunfight with Joe Perkins, and has been in hospital for a while now, and is finally coming out of that, but is told that, as we said, because of lack of oxygen during the times when he was clinically dead, that he now also has a brain injury as well. And of course, Sophia, who got hit by a boat and half drowned and ended up with amnesia and was in a mental institution. So it'll be interesting to see how these three characters evolve and how these different scenarios play out.
Yeah, Kelly and Peter, both with matching head injuries. It's been quite an interesting time.
And who knows what's going on with Sophia. Ted does not appear to have a head injury, although he has a big gash on his forehead.
You might see if he's shown stumbling around later. So, yeah, could have a whole lot of people with head injuries.
Behaving in very, very different ways. Yeah, unexpected ways. That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. So, those were the exciting things for happening in Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
And in the real world, I'm supposed to start school Monday, and it's Friday, and I'm still in Hawaii. So, who knows if someone will get us a plane home. But I'm going to enjoy the room service and the free hotel room and the Waikiki Beach as long as I can.
Sounds good.
And then don't remember much of the coming months, so I think I probably had a full course load. I think actually I was carpooling. And so even on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I may not have had classes during Santa Barbara, I had to stay at the college because my carpool people, we did like an 8 to 5 thing, so that was probably extremely annoying. Knowing, sitting there in the cafeteria, just drinking coffee, doing nothing, knowing Santa Barbara was on.
Well, my family didn't get the channel that had Santa Barbara. I remember seeing the ads for it when we were staying with relatives in the city, and it was very exciting. And we've talked about the promos, but the idea of seeing a soap opera from the beginning sounded really enticing. But unfortunately, I grew up in a rural area back in times when you had an antenna, and our antenna just did not pick up the channel that Santa Barbara was on. So that's why this is all new to me.
And we will be back when we watch episode 115. Hello and welcome to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
The world's only Santa Barbara after show.
That we know of.
We assume that you've just watched these episodes, and now it's after. We have most recently watched episode 115 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired on Monday, January 7th, 1985. And I am back home from Hawaii. An Air Canada plane was finally sent, empty, to Hawaii to pick us up.
Wow.
And thanks to my mother insisting we were at the airport at 6 a.m. every day, we got to board first. Now, why does it make a difference to board a free flight? Well, because they seated us in first class.
Oh.
And we thought, well, that's nice. We have some cushy chairs. But they also treated us as if we had paid for a first class ticket. So we got all the first class amenities and the little TV. I think they have a TV, I can't remember. And all the first class food. So that was a nice bonus after a free extra week in Hawaii to get my only ever in my life first class trip.
That could have backfired. They could have loaded you in the back first.
They did not. They probably used whatever their standard procedures are. So, back at Okanagan College, first day of school of the new year, didn't even have an excuse to miss a day. And I probably missed this episode because it was a Monday.
Mm.
So Ted tells Lakin he is unsure if Lionel is innocent.
Mm.
And Lakin says she doesn't even want to face her father and wants to leave, so they go over to the Capwell house and hang out in Ted's room for a while. And then Ted thinks they should just leave, I don't know, town? I didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, it sounded like he's proposing. It didn't necessarily sound like they were running away forever, although I guess they could be. It sounds like they just really wanted a break, a little time to talk things out and be away from all of their family's craziness.
So Ted packs up his suitcase, tells Lakin he can borrow a bunch of clothes from Eden.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say he? And they're about to leave, then she changes her mind, and then he manages to change it back again by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So maybe another one of their little runaway to a hotel adventures that they have from time to time.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and we'll get to see Lakin wearing Eden's clothes, perhaps.
Yes, although I would have thought that actually Kelly would be a better fit, because I think Kelly's a little bit smaller than Eden. She seems a little bit shorter, so I would have thought Kelly might have some old clothes that wouldn't have been as noticeably missing. But anyway.
The style might not be as drastically different as what Lakin's used to. They all have distinct styles, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Back out in the wilds of California, exterior California, railroad tracks, Lionel is lying by the tracks.
Yes.
Possibly dead. A hobo shows up, predicting snow, and decides to swap jackets and shoes with Lionel, and also takes Lionel's wallet. And then covers him with some brush. I guess he's assuming Lionel will die, so that's pretty terrible.
Or that he is basically already dead. There's no indication that
he wasn't properly trained to see if something
No,
was
I mean,
dead.
he doesn't really check his pulse or anything, but he kind of pokes at him a bit, and when Lionel doesn't move, he just starts stealing his stuff.
So, just at the very end of the episode, Lionel stirs a little. So, he's not dead! Yay!
No.
Which is good, because he's involved in like a half a dozen storylines.
Yeah. And I don't think that hobo could quite pull off most of them.
No, but I'm thinking maybe there's some wackiness where the hobo, leads Mason on a wild goose chase by using Lionel's credit card all over the state, maybe even hopping a train and using it throughout the country, while Lionel's just wandering in the desert or finds maybe a shack like the one Santana spent time in. And I have a feeling this means Lionel's not coming back anytime soon. That it's going to be a bit of a delay.
That's what I was sort of thinking too, was that this hobo, maybe he'll make his way back to Sacramento or something and start using Lionel's credit cards or, whatever, flashing, his ID, and that Mason, of course, will be looking for Lionel, because Lionel's in either form, whether as a hobo or as himself, is not showing up for his appointed time. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of reports of Lionel Lockridge in various parts of Northern California, and I think that's going to lead to some interesting adventures.
And might as well give Lionel an Odysseus-like journey back home. And maybe he even has amnesia. So
maybe
very Chester Tate-like at this point, but
yeah, and plus we don't know what Sophia, I assume Dominic is no longer a costume she's going to be using, or a persona she'll be using. We don't know what Sophia's going to do. It sounds like she had a bit of a life back east. We don't know quite what her relationship with Marcello is, but what will she do now? We don't know.
It'd be interesting if she went back and got settled into Santa Barbara, thinking she was free of Lionel, only for him to return a few weeks from now.
Yeah.
So on the train, after they pretend that they don't know anything about a man falling off the train to the other people who heard screams, they quickly forget about Lionel, and Marcello asks Sophia if she's coming home. So that's an interesting phrase. So it sounds like they live together. And she says her children need her. He says, that was not the real reason you came back this time.
Hmm.
So it's a reference possibly to the time 5 years earlier when she was at Channing's party.
Yeah, that's right.
Or maybe she's come back multiple times in different disguises, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously, if she was Cece's pilot that one time. So she goes, "You look a lot like a shoeshine boy I once encountered."
Well, she knows how to fly a plane. I mean, maybe she's taken, flown a plane back home a few times too.
It's an interesting dichotomy with, possibly mentally ill, amnesiac, doesn't know who she is, yet all these other skills, plus an actress, plus a master of disguise.
Yeah.
So she says she was so close to her children this time.
Yeah.
And Marcello says that her children are grown and don't need her. And then he concludes, well, maybe you're the one who needs them.
Yeah.
So, and back in Santa Barbara, Eden visits Cruz. She seems to be a little less combative than in the past. She seems quite excited. And he gives her the slides. Then I think she makes a crack about Elizabeth Peel, and he decides to compare her favorably to Eden, and they end up having an argument for no readily apparent reason, and he ends up throwing her off the boat, literally throwing her overboard.
Yeah.
So she goes home, reads the log, and finds some exciting news, and runs back to tell Cruz that one of the pages indicates that somewhere on that boat there is a desk, Amanda Lockridge's desk, in which she has, at the back, hidden her diary, and the captain feels that she noted the location of the emerald in that diary.
Mm-hmm.
So Eden wants to join up with Cruz to form a company to get that emerald.
Yes.
Now, that emerald belongs to Nepal, as far as I recall.
Yes, I don't think they could just run in, claim it, and get it cut down into little diamonds and start spending the money, or little emeralds and start spending the money.
I don't know if stolen property becomes suddenly salvageable just because it was involved in a wreck, and actually the emerald wouldn't be on a wreck, it would be on an island. So I don't think anyone has a claim to it other than the Nepalese temple that it was stolen from.
Yeah, but this is part of a continuing pattern we've seen so far, where there does seem to be a little bit of a slightly blurry understanding of these sorts of rights.
Mm-hmm. Certainly the idea of looting doesn't seem to trouble her.
No.
Any more than it did Nathaniel Catwell.
No.
So they come up with a name for their partnership, because Cruz is in. Probably just because he wants to hang out with Eden. And they call it the Unholy Alliance Company, which is a bit goofy.
Yeah.
But possibly not the goofiest name they ever come up with for a company on Santa Barbara. So, Peter Flint. Creepy music follows him throughout this episode, so we know things are not well in his head.
Yeah.
He is told he's got to leave the La Mesa because they're closing. So he tries to chat a little bit with Barbara, and she tells him she's an actress. She's only been in town 10 days, remember? Yeah. And he says, he might be able to help her with that. And then keeps hallucinating Kelly's face during the conversation, but is lucid enough that she doesn't, I guess, notice that he's sort of dissociating a little bit. Does come off as creepy to us, even with what we do see. So
yes, he absolutely does.
She's maybe very tired after a long shift. So she locks up the restaurant, and surprise! Peter's waiting for her
with a carnation.
He's brought her a single carnation, which I paid 99 cents for this one. I'm gonna predict he paid 39 cents, and also he has a bottle of perfume as well, which may have some significance, or maybe thought
it's
that
Kelly's
the carnation was too
favorite perfume.
Maybe it was. He definitely didn't say that aloud at all. And he says they should go for a drink somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And says, oh, maybe we should take a shortcut through this dark, deserted alley. Almost something exactly like that.
Yeah, he does.
Anyway, basically not an appealing route for anyone to take. So I think she's a little put off by that at this point. But she says, let's just have a drink inside. I think she thinks it'll be safer just to go back in the restaurant, even though she's alone with him. And she goes to get some wine.
And he closes down the blinds.
He says, oh, do you usually leave these blinds open?
Yeah.
She goes, oh, no, I forgot to close them. So he says, oh, I'll close them for you. So he closes all the blinds. And the next time we see him at the end of the show, Peter's all wet, sweaty, I guess, buttoning up his shirt. And very disturbing scene. And then the camera pans down, or tilts down, to show Barbara lying on the floor, not conscious.
She looks maybe like she's been strangled. That's what I thought.
She could be sleeping. She could be dead. It seems like an odd place to be sleeping.
Yeah.
So Peter just doesn't say anything else other than he goes to the door to leave and then says, see you in class tomorrow, Kelly.
Yeah.
So, Peter Flint, I just don't see him coming back from this storyline. This might be something you do on your way out the door.
Well, I was surprised actually because it did seem when they were talking outside the restaurant that she was disturbed by him. And then when they went inside and he started closing the blinds, I thought she would try running out the back. But she didn't. She just started serving him wine. So that's one thing that surprised me a little bit. And I was also thinking about, Peter's condition, and I was thinking about how we've probably actually, even though the doctor only kind of announced it at the end of Peter's stay in the hospital when Peter was busy getting dressed, and the doctor sort of said, oh, by the way, you've got this huge mental disturbance. I think we've actually seen Peter's deteriorating mental health probably throughout most of his hospital stay, because he was injured in his altercation with Joe, and that probably did a lot of damage, and then he had his IV taken out by Mason accidentally, and that put him into critical condition again, and that probably deteriorated.
The doctor mentioned he was dead for a while. He was shot by Joe.
And then, if you think about it, even after that, there were times when he was sort of feigning passing out in order to not have to speak to people or whatever, but we also saw times when he really was passing out, and maybe each time he was passing out, his brain was being a little bit more damaged. So I think although the Peter we saw, even before he had the altercation with Joe Perkins, was definitely not a good person and certainly capable of homicide. This new Peter has been actually developing, I think, over the last month or two.
Now, I guess I should have asked you after they introduced Jacqueline, and then after Barbara, who do you think will be leaving next? I didn't realize I only had a day.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a chance to guess Barbara. But now that the cast has changed slightly, I should ask you again who you might think might leave next.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why Jackie's there exactly. I don't think she will be leaving right away, because there must be a reason why they've had her meet Ted Capwell or learn more about the Capwell story. And apparently her husband, who's in the military, has just given up his leave, so I think she's got to be there for a little while. But
and if she's going to be teaching at Lyman, that'll be another potential storyline for the Ford kids.
Yeah, and that's what I think will be a big factor there. So, um, I'm puzzled as to kind of beyond that possibility, sort of why she's there. So that's not a guess at her leaving necessarily anytime soon, but I am really puzzled as to what her story is going to be. As for who's leaving, well, I think you're right. I think Peter is now starting his slow exit from the show because, as you say, I don't think, I think if we do a long Kelly being stalked kind of storyline, I don't think he'll come back from that.
I mean, if they find out that he killed that waitress, then, I mean, he's going to jail, right? That's not something where, I mean, even with the head injury, I don't think he'll just, pop back and be cured and be in their lives again.
No. And unfortunately, the only thing, and I find Peter such an interesting character, but the only thing is now that he is so sort of mentally compromised, I don't think we're going to see quite as many fizzy little exchanges with Mason as we saw before. So.
But he does seem to be going in and out of his fantasy, so maybe he'll have some great exchanges with Mason.
Yeah.
Followed by a weird moment in the stairwell where he's all crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hoping for good things from Peter while it lasts. And so I guess your last guess was still slow attrition of Perkins's, right? So.
Yeah, well, and I don't think I'm not expecting to see Summer again.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since
we've
seen.
Yeah.
Well, at some point someone will say aloud, Summer's not coming back, I guess. And then we'll count her as being gone. So.
Yeah. I know. I mean, and it's not very nice, but I wouldn't mind if Amy's storyline kind of wrapped up and shuffled off, but I'm sure she's going to be there at least long enough to have the baby.
It's months.
And
5 or 6 months.
Yeah. And how that progresses with Brick, I don't know. I wouldn't see her as being a long haul character. But then I never predicted that Claudia would be on Dynasty as long as she was either. So she might be there a while. But, personally, I don't see a lot of storyline for Amy after the baby's born. And maybe she and Brick come to whatever conclusion they come up with.
When I look back on any exciting scenes of the 8.5 years of Santa Barbara that I remember, I never remember a scene with Amy in it. So that's
and I don't know necessarily how soap operas work, but I imagine different writers have different favorite characters. So my assumption with Amy is that maybe a writer brought her in and had developed the character and really liked the character and really liked the actress or whatever. Maybe that changes when you have different people in the writer's room. I don't know.
Yes, as I know with Days of Our Lives, there was just this constant, and still happens, I think, thing where every time a new head writer came on, they would kill off the people they hated. And so, a head writer would come on who just hated Teo Penglis, would kill off Tony DeMira, or Andre DeMira, or both. And then another writer would come in and say, I hate this Jack Devereaux. I don't care about Jack and Jennifer. Kill off Jack. And then, but I got to bring Tony and Andre back to life because I really like them. And then the next writer would kill off Tony or Andre, but bring Jack back to life. And so Tony, Andre, and Jack have died and come back so many times because they're really, really popular with a lot of people, viewers. And it was just one vindictive person, has killed them off. And unlike, let's say Frankie on Another World, which a lot of people were upset with, Tony, Andre, and Jack have this history of coming back to life, which maybe Another World didn't have as much as Days of Our Lives does. It's now a tradition to come back to life on Days of Our Lives.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that ever happened on Santa Barbara. Oh, what am I saying,
It's a different
Sophia?
show. It's a different show.
Yeah, it has a totally different feel. I guess all shows sort of get their own
So what I'm saying is, you asked me who's going next, and I'm sure different actors come and go and whatever too, but it just seems a lot of these characters, maybe they're ones like Summer perhaps, that a writer tried out and they tried to do different things with, and then realized that there might be other ways to grow the core characters or whatever. So
I was doing an unofficial account of blondes versus non-blondes on this show. And before Amy got there, it was pretty even. I mean, brunettes and black hair combined equaled blondes, but now we're up by about 3 or 4 blondes. So, although we saw that old picture of Sophia where she was a brunette, so she counts as both.
Well, and Santana started out with blonde highlights the first couple episodes.
And I'm pretty sure Elizabeth Peel had brown hair in her first episode and is blonde now. So. And Cece's hair goes from brown to grey, depending if it's a flashback.
Goes through complete regenerations.
Every time we have a flashback, his hair is a different color.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm very excited to see what happens next with Peter and with Lionel, at the very least. So, we will be watching episode 116 of Santa Barbara, and we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back
Hello.
to week 24 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We've watched episode 116, which originally aired on January 8th, 1985. A Tuesday. Now, Sophia has a feeling that Lionel's still alive, but Marcello tries to convince her that he's definitely dead. And then they talk again about why she wants to go back to Santa Barbara. She talks about her children, but then Marcello decides that perhaps she wants Cece back.
And they talk about returning to Europe, which I hadn't caught on in the last episode that they were actually living in Europe. I thought for some reason they were perhaps living in Chicago or living in the eastern United States.
They talk about catching a flight from Chicago. So, well, Marcello's got a European accent of some kind.
Yes.
Marcello Aramanti, that sounds Italian. Now, Lionel is alive and in the back of a truck. A huge truck in which are living a bunch of circus people from Luigi's Traveling Circus. So there's one circus member driving this big truck down the road, and 3 in the back. There's a very small man and a very strong man and a very large woman. And
I thought it was interesting that the fellow driving the truck is obviously the clown in the act, because he's wearing full clown makeup, which I don't know is what clowns usually do day to day
when they're driving down
the highway. But anyway, that's how we know he's in the circus, I guess.
So while he's still unconscious, they find the wallet of the hobo that had switched wallets with Lionel. And so then later, when they hear about Lionel Lockridge on the news, they don't realize it's him. But they decide to help him catch the train that he fell off of. So they drive on full speed down the highway to try to catch up with the train. Now, this is the last thing I expected, was that Lionel would get back on that train in this episode.
Yeah, and the other thing I found kind of fun about this is there's no indication, at least that I could see through the whole episode, that Lionel ever really notices or cares that he's wearing a different jacket and shoes than he had
That's true.
before.
He does manage to pull his collar up the same way he does. Has been doing lately.
And he seems actually
popular in '85.
Pretty unupset, if that's a word, by the fact that he's got a completely different wallet with a completely different name. He notices right away he doesn't have any money, but the fact that this belongs to someone else, it's sort of like, oh, okay, roll with it.
Yeah, very laid back.
Yeah.
He, for some reason, thinks he's going to need a ticket when he gets back on the train. I don't think they're past Butte, Montana yet, which is where his previous ticket was for. You'd think the conductor would just remember you're going to Butte because he bought the ticket off him.
And he certainly made himself memorable.
But he definitely thinks he needs a ticket, so he decides to parlay the $4 he finds in Scruggs, I think was his name, wallet. Charlie Stubbs' wallet, and plus his very expensive diving watch, and plays poker with the circus members until he wins enough money to get that train ticket. And the next thing we know, he's on the train, has a little encounter with the conductor, who says, "Oh, I thought you got off." He goes, "Oh, I did. A friend of mine was sick, or his friend's mother was sick, but she got better, so I took a taxi to race the train." So he, conductor's not too happy to have Lionel back because he was a bit of a troublemaker. Then Lionel has enough money to bribe a porter, $20 I think it was.
Yeah, just to borrow his jacket.
borrow his jacket and to deliver the food to stateroom number 5.
Mm-hmm.
And he waits till Sophia leaves and then knocks on the door, and we hear Marcello say, "Come in." And then we hear Marcello say, "Oof!" So I believe that Lionel has knocked out Marcello, and we'll be waiting in that stateroom for Sophia to come back.
The other thing that Lionel doesn't seem overly concerned about is the announcement on the radio that there's basically a warrant out for his arrest and
for skipping bail.
And that he's going to be going to jail. He's not in any hurry to try and get back to Santa Barbara and explain his absence or do anything to save their bail money or anything like that. So I'm not quite sure whether it's because he's identified catching Sophia as the way he's going to prove his innocence, or if he's just very driven to find her and get a fuller explanation of her life and what's going on. I don't know. Mm-hmm. What is your thinking about that?
I don't know. He's being very violent with Marcello and Sophia.
Yeah.
I think he's angry that they've railroaded him. So I think that's his only hope is that Sophia somehow testifies that she set him up. But even just proving Sophia's alive, I don't know will help him necessarily if she's claims not to have set him up. But
and a lot of people wouldn't really necessarily buy that she was Dominic. Mm-hmm. And not everyone knows about Dominic, so I don't know. I think she is his best hope, but it is a long shot. That's why I wondered if there was a little bit of an obsessive element to it as well, because he is definitely not behaving in the way we are used to him behaving around Sophia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, who would be on his side. Who would he call? Mason, right? I mean, Kelly and Joe know Dominic, and Mason's is sort of only contacting the police, who would not be really on his side necessarily. So,
no.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how this is going to go. But then I've been surprised a few times in this story. So, Cece tells Eden that Ted has run away with Lakin. And Brick and Amy are questioning students at Lyman about whether they know where Ted and Lakin have gone. Mm-hmm. And they run into Jackie, who's just been offered the job at Lyman. Mm-hmm. So I guess we will be seeing Jackie in consort with the teenage storyline, half of which is left, and another quarter of which doesn't go to Lyman.
That's right.
So it's just Jade.
We haven't seen Jade for a few episodes. So.
And then after Kelly leaves, Cece says, I'm going to forbid her from marrying Joe Perkins.
Because that worked so well for him before.
So he tries to have a discussion with Rosa about that, how he doesn't think Joe Perkins is right for Kelly. But Rosa actually comes down on Kelly's side in the discussion. Not clear if she manages to bring Cece over to Joe's side. Seems unlikely.
But it is a little bit of a continuation of what we see earlier in the episode when Cece is very upset about Ted and Lakin having gone off. And he's railing against Tad. And in that part of the episode, it's Eden who kind of talks him down and points out that he himself probably had his little moments of passion when he was young as well. Mm-hmm. And so she manages to kind of cool him off a little bit. And I think if Rosa doesn't convince him necessarily to be on Joe Perkins' side, I think she too does manage to cool him down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be a pattern with a lot of the women around CC.
It'll be interesting to see if Valentine's Day really is the date Joe and Kelly are getting married, which is, a little over a month away, and whether or not CC manages to stop it by then.
Well, and I also was thinking about that Valentine's date a little bit, because, if you think a few episodes back, or probably a week or two back, when Kelly tried to surprise Joe by arranging a wedding, an impromptu wedding in the little church, and he was dead set against it, and he wanted a big wedding when he was successful that he could pay for. And he's certainly not in that position right
I think
now.
he's really thinking his company is going to take off somehow, but now he's washing dishes or something, I think Kelly said.
Yeah. So I haven't really wrapped my head around why, the Christmas wedding was wrong and completely out of the question, but the Valentine's Day wedding is one that he would agree to.
I really feel like Joe has gone from being the main character in the show to being a background character, just with this casting change, basically.
I think with the casting change, and I think maybe with some of the other developments in the storyline as well. Just with, when Joe shot Peter, then that actually removed for a while anyway that threat. And that, I think, changed a lot of the emphasis in the story because, Peter was no longer a clear and present danger at that point. So that removed that. That removed essentially a rival. And then Peter cleared his name, so there was no longer that sense that Joe was on the run himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, changed a lot of the dynamics.
Now Elizabeth flirts with Brick. That's pretty much it.
It occurred to me watching this that one thing that Cece and Lionel have in common is that they are really the only characters who seem to like Elizabeth.
Yeah, Brick, obviously Brick's interested in Amy, but he avoids Elizabeth's come-ons, and she manages to draw him again against Brick's will.
Mm-hmm.
And she forces a quick drawing of his hands on him that he doesn't really seem to care to have.
Yeah, I thought it was weird that she actually gave him her entire sketchbook. That seemed like a bit of overkill.
It's like, I don't want this. Here, take it. And this whole book, too.
Yeah.
So, she's, I don't think she's actually gotten anything she wants yet. She's gone around with a whole lot of intentions, but nothing's actually borne fruit yet.
Yeah, I don't think she's quite as charming and persuasive as she's tried to convince herself that she is, because everyone seems to just sort of roll their eyes when she approaches them.
Yes, Augusta doesn't like her, Brick doesn't like her.
Eden,
Gina does not like her.
None of the female characters like her.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I don't think Kelly's had a scene with her at all.
I don't know if Minx has met her.
Yeah, I can't imagine Minx being that impressed with her either. So as I say, it seems to be mainly Cece and Lionel. One of the few things they share is...
and possibly, even Warren's kind of had a couple of run-ins with her.
Yeah.
Where she seems to be interested, but he's been busy looking for Summer. So. Now, Cruz and Eden go on their diving expedition down to the Amanda Lockridge to find the diary. Eden has a crudely drawn, what she calls a map of where Amanda's stateroom probably is, and Cruz says this is just a drawing and a guess. So, you better make sure I come with you, and so you don't get trapped down there. Next thing you know, Cruz is carrying an unconscious Eden back onto what I think is the Capwell yacht. And he gives her mouth to mouth that she won't regain consciousness. He calls someone to phone for help. And basically, she's still unconscious at the end of the episode.
Now, I was going to ask you, because you have actually done a bit of scuba diving, why she would be unconscious. Did she get the bends, or did she accidentally swallow water, or run out of oxygen?
She
or
could have run out of oxygen. You're always checking, like every 20 seconds, you're checking how much oxygen you have left. And if she was more excited about getting that book, she's only dived a couple of times. If she was not paying attention to that and in favor of trying to break into a desk or something, she may have not had enough oxygen to come back up. And even if she had enough oxygen once they got back off the boat, you still have to make it back to the surface, and you still have to stop at certain depths to let the nitrogen in your blood settle down. So, they may have been 3 feet from the surface at a decompression stop, but, not able to go up until they, done their 3 minutes or whatever they were supposed to do at that level. And if she passed out there, then, obviously, then he would have grabbed her and brought her up quicker, or it depends. He could have given her his air to finish the decompression, because you wouldn't want to both have the bends. But that's likely what happened. That she underestimated how much oxygen she needed. Because everyone uses it at a different rate. So just some people. The one guy I dived with, he needed 2 tanks because he went through twice as much oxygen. Well, looks like we picked a bad week for Carnation Week, because Barbara is dead. She has a chalk outline around her and a carnation beside her. And we find out from the various weird cops, there's like a Ron Burgundy type cop, and there's a super weird cop called Sergeant Clifford Monroe, or possibly Detective Sergeant Clifford Monroe.
Yeah, he's very much a character. He's got this kind of, I couldn't tell if it was velvet or corduroy.
He's not in
blazer.
uniform.
He's got this scarf.
He's a detective.
He's carrying a book. He seems to have Paul Burke's glasses on.
And he seems to be in here for the long haul. Like, this is not a one-off, one episode character that they've let this 3-line actor create. Clearly this is someone we're going to be seeing for a while.
And when we first see him, he has a very strong New York accent. That disappears as the episode goes on. So
we find out that Barbara was raped and then strangled with something like a scarf, and the murder is all over the news. Peter wakes up, still in his clothes. He doesn't remember what happened last night. He has little flashes of things. He sees the news reports about Barbara's death. At first, he doesn't even process them as being related to last night, but then he finds the remainder of a bunch of carnations. He finds like 4 or 5 carnations with an elastic around them, and kind of puts that together with what he's heard on the news. He finds the perfume. He finds scratches on his back and huge tears in his jacket. Then he finds the scarf. So, of course, he goes to La Mesa, which is probably not what they would recommend you do if you're a killer or a potential killer.
And La Mesa, contrary to what we might expect, is not still cordoned off.
It's bustling with activity and full of people having lunch and staff running around. But there are detectives wandering all over the place, just asking people at random, were you here yesterday? Did you see anyone talk to Barbara? And so when Peter stumbles in and super suspiciously pretends to make a phone call near the sergeant to find out what he's saying, and then hangs up and suspiciously goes to leave without ordering anything, Sergeant Monroe steps right up to him and says, "Hey, were you here yesterday?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I was here yesterday. I had lunch. I don't remember, who served me necessarily. I wasn't really paying attention." And very suspicious, but Sergeant Monroe does not necessarily seem to think he's that super suspicious. Oh yeah, you were here, eh? And then he suddenly says, "Wait a minute, aren't you Peter Flint?" Which I thought was hilarious after they'd already had quite a long conversation. And he says, "I thought you were in the hospital."
Mm-hmm.
And Peter says, "I'm fine now," which he's not.
No.
And, that seems to satisfy Sergeant Clifford Monroe. He's glad that Peter's fine. So Peter just sits down and orders some lunch, I guess, and borrows a paper from the neighboring table and reads all about what happened. And then he has a flashback of Barbara saying, "I'm not Kelly, no!" So I think he's put together that he's killed Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
This must be one of the blackouts that he mentioned to the doctor
Mm-hmm.
when he got released from the hospital. So then he goes home and burns the newspaper, the scarf, I assume the scarf, and the carnations, which is so weird. I think people, if they found charred carnations in your basket, that would be more suspicious than if you just had a bouquet of wilting carnations in your
They don't
in your house. So
necessarily last that long.
yeah, we'll see how long this one lasts. So yeah, that's suspicious. Hopefully no one will come over and see all the burnt carnations in his house, because that'll be too suspicious.
Or if he keeps burning his carnations and then he has a homicidal urge and has to keep buying new carnations, that in itself
and then add
could
them
be suspicious
to the bucket of previously burnt carnations. So that is it for our storyline in this episode, but we did get another full cast credits. We just had a full cast credits about 3 episodes ago, and there have been some changes. Ava Lazar was gone last time, but now, first of all, Dominic is gone, and Judith McConnell is for the first time credited as Sophia.
Yes.
So I think that is it for Dominic after 116 episodes. And we have Jackie Parks as a new character. She will be at Lyman. And we have Marcello Armonti. So that's, I don't think we have been given his last name within the story. But that is his name, Marcello Armonti, played by Wolf Muser. And we also have Sergeant Clifford Monroe. So my guess that he is in for the longer term, I think, is accurate.
Well, I think he will probably be in the cast at least for as long as it takes them to solve the mystery of who murdered Barbara, and probably all the subsequent people that Peter will murder on his way to
Now, the
Kelly.
thing that surprised me is that I hadn't remembered that we, the audience, knew right from the beginning that Peter was the killer. Because, it's been 35 years. I kind of thought it was going to end up being like a murder mystery, and we'd have to try and guess who it was. So it's interesting that we know right from the beginning. And we should mention the completely bonkers music that's playing in every scene of Peter's, this weird electronic music, that seems to be implying his brain is damaged.
Yeah, there's this weird sort of sound effect that comes on whenever he starts to have a blackout, and it really sounds more like it belongs in a science fiction show. It's almost this computer beeping noise. And I guess that signifies maybe the neurons in his brain malfunctioning or something like that. But it is a very strange noise to have in this context. It's something you would expect more, in a movie about robots or something like that.
I think it's very effective.
It is. Oh yeah, it's a great it's a great oral cue that something's gonna go on, but it is kind of odd too.
And one other change in the credits that you may not have spotted.
I don't remember spotting any others. What did
There
I
is
not
someone
spot?
missing from the credits.
Oh,
Summer is no longer
Summer
in
is
the
no
cast.
longer in the cast.
So I guess we have seen the last of Summer. What's her last name?
Blake.
Summer Blake.
Yeah.
And Warren will have to start dating Elizabeth now, I guess.
Yes, I guess that does leave some openings for Warren, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be Elizabeth. I mean, there's other potential people too.
Eden.
I don't know if an Eden.
Sophia.
Well, there's Jackie, I guess.
Jade.
As well.
Still Jade.
There's
Jackie.
still Jade.
Well, Jackie's married.
Yeah, but I mean, her husband's in the military, so there could be an accident or something with that.
Mm-hmm. So that's sort of an unexpected thing. Did not expect to see that in the credits before we knew for sure that she wasn't coming back. So.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because Santana was in the credits for quite some time after she left.
Mm-hmm.
Ava Lazar.
I'm just wondering if it's related to contracts. Like maybe
Yes.
when you sign a contract for 13 weeks, by law or by legal reasons, you have to be in the credit for those 13 weeks. And if you're written out beforehand and don't appear, well, that's one thing, and you may not get paid for those episodes, or maybe they do. Maybe it's a set rate.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have to appear in the credits until your 13 weeks is up, and maybe Summer's 8 weeks or whatever was up, and David Lazar's 17 weeks was not, or whatever.
Something like that. I'm sure they all negotiate certain terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe people who have, a little bit more experience or, have been promised different things get different contracts as well. I mean, maybe Summer was not supposed to be on the show as long as she was, and maybe they were just renewing her contract on a shorter timeline than some of the others.
It may be they wanted to try her out with Warren, see how things went there. Then they introduced Elizabeth a little later. Maybe they just thought that was a better option or something. Something changed in the writing.
Well, we'll find out. We'll but that does seem to wrap up Summer's
Or maybe they're sending
storyline.
Warren to jail for the rest of his life, and they won't need Summer. Thought they'd save money.
Well, we'll have to watch and find out what happens.
Yeah, we'll return after we watch episode 117 of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
In 1984, the Santa Barbara Cemetery saw many visitors who came by to talk to the dead, bring them scarves, bury coins, swear revenge, and haunt former lovers. The cemetery also suffered damage from the city's major earthquake. However, it only gained one new resident that year. Unfortunately, the cemetery would not be such a quiet place in 1985, as the year started off with the death of waitress Barbara Anderson, newly arrived in Santa Barbara to start a new life. Poor Barbara Anderson had only been in Santa Barbara for 10 days, having taken a waitressing job at La Mesa, alongside Sally Taylor and Kelly Capwell. She dreamed of having something that Kelly Capwell had, a man like Joe Perkins. On that tragic day, when Kelly Capwell left her alone to close up the restaurant, she encountered the brain-damaged Peter Flint. Peter Flint, addled by the aneurysm in his brain, and confused by Barbara's blonde hair, mistook her for his ex-fiancée Kelly Capwell. One thing led to another, and Peter murdered Barbara, leaving her body alongside a single white carnation. Thus, were it not for Kelly Capwell, Barbara Anderson may one day have found her Joe Perkins. So we must now sadly increase the size of the Kelly Capwell wing of Santa Barbara Cemetery, a small section dedicated to those who would still be alive, if not for Kelly Capwell.
Hello and welcome to Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara episode 117.
Hello.
We watched the Thursday, January 10th, 1985 episode of Santa Barbara. And I realized as I was posting the previous episode yesterday that we've been off by a day since January 1st because there wasn't an episode that aired January 1st, 1985. So all the days that we've been saying, all the weekdays we've been saying we're off by one weekday up until yesterday. So this is the Thursday episode. Cruz revives Eden. Turns out she did run out of oxygen as we had calculated. They end up kissing. Then she says he's mistaking gratitude for something else. They decide in the end that the desk was not down there. But Eden does recall that a lot of stuff washed ashore back then. And Eden goes to the library, but Cruz goes to some magical place, some kind of public records office, where he finds basically everything he needs to find in one scene. He finds out where the stuff washed ashore, he finds out where it was taken, he finds out where that matches up with the current addresses, he finds out there was a fire and then it was moved somewhere else, and basically tracks it down to the desk, down to a junk shop that's been in business since the 20s with the same family. So Cruz buys the desk for $20. He seems to look at the first desk that's there and think, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
He sees a bit of water damage. He's already paid for it by that point, I think. Eden meets him there, and they take up some drawers, but Eden says, well, the diary said it was in the back. So Cruz picks up an axe and is about to break apart the desk.
So I guess there are a couple of things for me, and I just find it really curious that Lionel didn't go this route many years earlier, or maybe even when he was starting to get interested in the Amanda Lockridge, because I would have thought the kind of research and just general logical thinking about this would have been right up Lionel's alley. I mean, he's in an archives, he's looking through old books, he's looking at old drawings, and then he tracks it down to a junk shop. I mean, that would have seemed like the perfect thing for a Lionel to do, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing. And yes, they seem to get very lucky and find the right desk right away. And it looked to me a little bit like the old desk you had from Sears.
Well, I
guess
suspect it wasn't an 1800s, 1880s replica. Elsewhere in the city, Kelly tells Joe that Barbara is dead, so somehow Joe has managed not to watch the news for an entire day. Mason arrives with the stenographer to get their statements about Warren. So they talk about Warren admitting to stealing the coins. And Mason also wants to know if they have any idea what Summer might have known about those coins. Then Sergeant Monroe arrives to question Kelly about Barbara, and he lets them smell the perfume that was found there. So I don't know what it was that Peter had. Maybe it was just the cardboard box from the perfume that he had afterward, the morning after, because he did find that in his pocket. Unless
he bought a bunch of bottles of it or something, maybe.
So Sergeant Monroe lets Kelly and Joe smell the perfume, and Kelly says that Barbara never wore that, but that it does smell familiar to her. And Joe says it smells familiar to him too.
So then I guess that eliminates the idea that this might have been Kelly's favorite perfume, because she sort of recognizes it, but it's not.
Maybe it's some perfume Peter once gave her that she really hated and never wore, but then why would Joe?
Yeah.
Why would Joe know it then? Yeah.
The only, one thought I had was maybe it was Ginger's perfume.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that obviously it'll come into play at some point.
Yeah.
Then I guess Cece's talk with Rosa did have an effect, because he tells Joe and Kelly that he wants to throw them the biggest wedding. So this could be a trick, of course, but it's hard to know yet. Then he also offers Joe a job drilling wells. He says, "Oh yes, all your water drilling well knowledge will come in very handy, so it's perfect for you to drill oil wells. Seems a bit dodgy for something that Joe's been involved in for a couple of weeks. Or maybe a couple of months at best. Anyway, Joe's not having it. And Kelly tries to talk him into it, but Joe says that this is clearly more about buying Kelly back into the family. So, as we know, this sort of thing doesn't go over well with CC. He's going to be angry about that.
Yeah, but it seemed to me when Cece saw Kelly and Joe kind of having a bit of an argument about this, because Kelly does say at one point to Joe that she is a Capwell. She, that is her family, and that does sort of come with the whole package. And they're kind of squabbling over it a little bit, and I did think that I saw CC with a little smile on his face.
Oh, so that is his plan.
So I don't think he's necessarily unhappy to see them having a little bit of a disagreement over this.
So maybe instead of actively trying to keep them apart, he's trying to make them realize they're from two different worlds and don't belong together, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is his whole contention, I think.
And I do have to say, Joe has been kind of all over the place to me on a few things lately. He wants to work, but he doesn't want to work for CC. He wants a wedding, but he doesn't want to get married when Kelly arranges one, but then he's willing to have a Valentine's wedding, but he doesn't want one that is about anything except their love, but then he could have had the one Kelly had arranged, so...
Yeah. Joe's a bit flaky here.
Yeah, I feel like he is right now, too.
Mason gets Summer's location from Gina. And Gina says Summer's in a private hospital. I forget what city they said she was in.
Los Angeles, I thought.
So Cece overhears this because it's all happening in the Capwell atrium, and he says he can send a pilot over there to go get her. And Gina says that would be great. She wants things to be as painless as possible for Summer. So zip her over into town, get her testimony, try to, not mess up her life in the, in therapy. So Summer arrives, and Eden mentions that Warren was looking for her. And then Gina tells her that Warren knows about Hank. And then Summer says that she's in therapy and tells us about how helpful her group therapy is.
Mm-hmm.
And that she doesn't blame Gina for what Hank did. So we had noted last time that Summer's out of the credits, so her contract obviously has lapsed. So we're thinking maybe they're just paying her like the day rate or whatever to come in and wrap up her storyline, and these last two things sound like ticking some boxes. Forgive Gina. I'm in therapy. Now she'll give her testimony about Warren, and then she can go back to therapy, and her storyline's wrapped up. So then Mason comes to get a deposition, or brings Summer in, I guess. And Summer tells Mason that Warren told her the coins were part of his collection, even though he doesn't have a collection.
Mm-hmm.
And Mason asks if Warren would conceal or destroy evidence to protect his father. Summer says, well, I wouldn't even know what that would look like. So she's not really giving him anything against Warren except that one basic thing about the coins.
Mm-hmm.
So Mason, leaves at one point, and Summer spots a Polaroid sticking out of his files, and when she looks at it, it's a Polaroid from the crime scene of Barbara lying dead on the floor, and that really freaks Summer out.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes running out of there.
Yeah.
And I guess Mason decides he didn't get much from her anyway, that he would actually be better off if he just, kept her in town till the trial and had her testify on the stand. So he's probably thinking maybe he can get her to say something that will help him if he pushes her the right way.
So, what do you think will be the outcome of that? I mean, I definitely had the feeling when I saw Summer run out that perhaps she would not be back, that maybe she'd run off back to Los Angeles, or actually maybe it was Pasadena where she was having her therapy. I can't remember, but that she might run off and, Gina wouldn't maybe let her be found again, something like that.
Yeah, because Mason said, "Oh, I'll have to keep her in town," so he must have the ability to do that. But I guess it all depends if Cece whisks her away.
Yeah.
Back to the private hospital.
Yeah, because Cece might do that. I mean, Cece's certainly not getting along with Mason right now, and I think he'd be very sympathetic to Summer's case, especially if Gina made a plea for her.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of ironic, isn't it? We had a long discussion about how Summer was out of the credits, and then she was right back again.
She was right back, yeah. But yeah, clearly wrapping up some loose ends, so it must be kind of annoying to be, fired, but then say, "Oh, come in for a day or two, just so we can wrap up your story or hand it off to someone else," because now she's put all that stuff about the rape onto Gina. Theoretically, that could be a Gina storyline now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe Hank raped my sister and all that stuff, and so really they've. I would have liked to have seen that with Summer. But maybe the next head writer will change their mind. We'll see. Elsewhere on the train, Lionel asks Sophia where she's been for these 15 years. He gives her some rapid-fire questioning. Tells her that he loved her and didn't want to kill her. That she loved him, and she says, "No, I only ever loved Cece." So this sounds like more delusion, because clearly from the flashbacks that we've seen, that's not true. And she's I think scrambled things up in her head, or she did have amnesia, so maybe she doesn't even really remember it. The train suddenly stops, and a sheriff gets on looking for Lionel, and that conductor sees the photo. It's like, that guy.
Yeah.
So they search the cars. So Lionel and Sophia play a bit of cat and mouse with the sheriff to avoid being spotted. Sophia actually sends him on his way at one point because Lionel threatens to expose her. And then Lionel says that he wants to make a deal. Lionel says, "I won't charge you with planting false evidence if you clear me." But Sophia has another deal in mind. She says, "How about you don't tell my family I'm alive, and you don't charge me with anything, and I won't tell the world that you and Elizabeth Peel have faked all these paintings you're bringing up from the Amanda Lockridge, and here's something that we didn't know.
So this is new information.
All those paintings of minxes that you've been swapping out 1 or 2 a year to sell." So I don't know where Elizabeth overheard this piece of information, or Sophia overheard this piece of information, or if she, I don't know, put it together somehow.
Well, I think when, now was it the second time she broke into the Lockridge home, of course we saw Lionel and Elizabeth there, and that's how she found out Elizabeth was a counterfeiter. This was all a scheme. But I don't think we really saw quite the end of that scene. So my assumption would be maybe they had talked a little bit more while Sophia, dressed as Dominic, was kind of hiding behind the pillar or wherever she was. So I suspect she came up with some clues about that during that episode.
That makes sense. So the sheriff spots Lionel eventually and chases him through several cars, and he's got his gun drawn. He fires at him once, and it looks like Lionel's going to try and jump off the train. The sheriff's got his gun drawn, and that's the cliffhanger. So.
And it was really a lot of very interesting back and forth between Lionel and Sophia over the course of the whole episode, because we start the episode with Sophia. She wanted him dead, but she's worried about whether he is dead, and then when she realizes he's not, it's a lot of back and forth between her threatening to expose him and then using her acting skills to not expose him, and then making a deal and then making another deal, And so we just see a whole bunch of different aspects to their obviously very complicated relationship just in this one episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's freaked out that he's there, so she's acting quite erratically.
Yeah. Yeah, but Lionel is not really acting necessarily that rationally himself in this episode, too, I would say. I mean, he jumps on top of Marcello, and, you know, it's actually a very sinister scene where we see Marcello sitting upright in the chair, but he's unconscious.
Yeah, we're not even sure if he's alive.
Yeah.
Well, we've got one more episode this week, episode 118, so we will be back after that. We'll see what happens.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Misha and Dianne with Santa Barbara, episode 118.
Hello.
We watched the Friday, January 11th, 1985 episode. It's a cruel, cruel summer. But for Summer Blake, it was a cruel, cruel New Year.
Yeah.
And I feel like I saw this episode originally.
Well, maybe you had a professional day or something.
Well, it's the second week of school, but... Or first week. It was a Friday. I don't know. I must have gotten home early enough. A lot of that seemed familiar. Kelly is upset with Joe for turning down Cece's offer. He repeats his contention that Cece's trying to buy him. And she says it's tradition for the father of the bride to pay for a wedding. And Joe says he spent too long locked up in one prison just to end up in another. So Kelly gets another headache. They're not seeing eye to eye on this subject at all, really.
And it made me wonder if perhaps Kelly's headaches are influenced by stress, or
it seems to be the last few times. Whenever she's been arguing with someone, she gets them.
Yeah.
Cruz chops up the desk that he purchased, and they find nothing. And then they joke about the possibility that there may have been more than one desk on the Amanda Lockridge.
Well, it did seem that he found that one quite quickly and easily.
Yeah. So they decided to try to find the island just based on the captain's log. You know, they get the latitude and longitude. But they don't actually see an island in that location on the charts. So they're thinking it's possibility it may have sunk, which I guess happens to islands.
And this is one of those, it kind of reminds me, the storyline, a little bit of some of the things you see nowadays on Days of Our Lives, where they'll go off on a great adventure but still hold down these high-powered jobs. And, you know, while we're doing all this, of course, Cruz is both an agent and, of course, writing all these reports and doing all this work for C.C. Capwell. And Eden is running her father's hotel chain.
But she's also getting reports from Cece, or from Cruz, so she's got something to do with the oil business as well.
Yeah.
Just like Mason has multiple roles.
Yeah.
Cruz talks to Kelly at one point and says he understands Joe turning down Cece's offer because he's a proud guy. So Kelly seems to like that conversation.
She softens a lot after that.
Now Peter's doctor has brought him in again to talk about his blackouts and says he's discovered an aneurysm near his brain that is in an area that's inoperable. And Peter basically realizes he has months or weeks or days to live. He's not happy about that. He ends up asking for some privacy and ends up tearing up all the x-rays.
Yeah.
And then he says, Kelly, everything that's happened to me is because of you, because I love you so much. In the presidential suite at the Capwell Hotel, a lot happens in this suite. And there's a lot of comings and goings. It's one of the longest summaries I've had just because of the
just to keep everyone straight.
Getting moved around. In the presidential suite, Mason asks Warren how he got the coins, which Warren doesn't volunteer. Then Mason says Summer is bent on protecting him, and Warren's like, oh, do you talk to Summer?
So he's excited that Summer's back in town. Mason gets a phone call telling him that Lionel just jumped or fell off a train in Montana, and that a sheriff had been shooting at him just prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
So Warren's not too happy about that.
We also have Veronica with them as well.
Yes, that's right. Veronica was there the whole time. And she tells, Mason tells Veronica that Lionel has jumped bail.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very upset by this. And Mason notices, but she says she's upset because of the murder.
Mm-hmm.
Peter arrives and says he's leaving town and tries to get a little money out of Mason. Or a lot of money out of Mason.
Mm-hmm.
And he might want to leave the country, but he'll need enough to start a business. So anyway, Mason says no. So Peter leaves, but goes immediately into the secret room to spy on Mason and Veronica.
Yeah.
And
then Kelly and Summer arrive later as well.
Well, Veronica tells Mason there's something different about Peter since.
Yes, that's right.
Since his stay in the hospital, she mentions seeing Peter give the flowers to the girl, but then acting weird afterwards. So.
Yeah, I think she sees something in his eyes that isn't quite right. Because remember, Veronica worked very closely with Peter. He was the only person he trusted when he felt that he was being held in hospital. So if she's noticed something, then that does mean something. That is significant.
So Kelly phones, and she needs to speak to Mason, or vice versa. And Peter says, "Oh, Kelly, I'd wait for you forever." And then Kelly eventually arrives at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Summer and Gina are having lunch somewhere. And I'm not sure now if it was La Mesa or not.
It was not La Mesa, I think.
Then it was the State Street.
Yeah, because I was looking for that because I thought, my goodness, La Mesa would be the worst place to bring Summer, but I don't think it was.
And I'm not sure La Mesa has the jukebox.
Yeah.
Whereas we know the State Street Bar, which today has been now called the State Street Saloon throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So that's now the second name for this place. And I'm sure, as I said in an earlier podcast, that I remember being called the State Street Bistro. So I think the place will undergo a few name changes. So Summer asked Gina if she had seen that Barbara's photograph in Mason's files, and Gina hadn't seen that. And she says that must be what she looked like, only she lived through it.
Mm-hmm.
So she was very traumatized by that. Gina suggests that she should see Warren.
Mm-hmm.
Warren arrives where they're having lunch, and so Gina goes and says she has to put Brandon to bed, so Summer and Warren are left alone. The jukebox is playing You're Out of Touch by, is it Hall Notes?
Yep.
And then Warren tells her it's okay if she told Mason everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a little shocked by that. She says she wants to protect him, but that she does have to leave town soon to go back to her therapy. So, and then right now she has to go and see Mason. So Warren says there's a killer in town right now, and I can't let you go out there by yourself. So he escorts her to Mason's suite.
Yeah.
Gina tells Eden that she's making a special dinner for Cece, and Eden, she doesn't outwardly look gleeful, but probably is inwardly. She says that, he's out looking at paintings with Elizabeth Peel.
Yeah.
I imagine they'll probably end up having dinner together. And Gina says, the stuff will keep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very flexible. I always manage to make things work out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mason wants Kelly to quit her job because there may be some kind of psychotic who only goes after waitresses. So, it's hard to see a pattern when there's only been one murder. So, that's, I guess, the assumption they're going on.
Yeah.
Anything is possible because it's so... they've ruled out someone she knows. She's only been in town 10 days, and her ex-boyfriend is in Australia, so it's like
that's right.
Totally wild card murder. She refuses to quit her job.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I can't just abandon everyone. So he says he'll put more guards around the place. So this is actually good, since it's one of our few sets. Hopefully, if anything else happens, it'll be at La Mesa.
Mm-hmm.
Warren and Summer arrive at the suite, and just then the phone rings, and Mesa tells Warren that they just picked up his father in Montana. Sorry, no, they just picked up his father in Sacramento, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mesa and Warren leave to go see Lionel, leaving Kelly and Summer alone in the suite with Peter watching them through the two-way mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So they decide to get a coffee, and Summer says, "I don't want to go to La Mesa because of the murder." So they go to the State Street Saloon, and Kelly phones to have Sally cover her shift at La Mesa. So we haven't seen Sally
we know
in
Sally
so long.
survived. She survived
the earthquake. She's clearly still working with Kelly, even though I guess she's never had a shift at the same time as Kelly. And so with Barbara gone and Kelly gone, you'd think Sally would already have been working.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's another waitress there as well. So maybe we'll get to see Sally again.
Yeah, maybe.
Mason and Ward show up and find that instead of Lionel Lockridge in custody, it's Stubbs, the hobo who stole Lionel's wallet. Says, "Well, he was dead, so I didn't think he'd mind."
Yeah.
So Ward freaks out, thinks maybe Stubbs killed him, but then Mason points out, well, then Mason gets Stubbs to clarify when that was, and he said it was yesterday in Sacramento. So he says, well, Lionel was just spotted in Montana a few hours ago, so he must not have been dead.
Yeah.
Although he may be dead now. So at the saloon, the State Street Saloon, Peter is spying on Summer and Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And Summer and Kelly are talking about their testimony about the coins, what they've said to Mason. And Summer wants Kelly not to implicate Warren in Channing's murder. She's quite certain Warren had nothing to do with it. But Kelly's not. Kelly doesn't want to cover for Warren if he did something. So they actually have a big fight about that.
Mm-hmm.
Summer says, "Oh, I'm going to leave," And then Kelly says, No, I'll leave. So Kelly leaves. And Peter gets up to follow her. She says, "Oh, Kelly's leaving, you've got to go." And then he turns, and he sees Summer, but he pictures Kelly, just the same way he pictured Kelly when he looked at Barbara.
Yeah.
And he says, "Kelly didn't leave, I was mistaken." And then the jukebox starts playing "I Always Feel Like Somebody's Watching Me" by Rockwell, which was a big hit in 85.
And we start to hear that weird sort of futuristic,
Peter's brain music.
Yeah, Peter's brain music.
So, knowing that Summer's not in the credits anymore, our spidey senses are tingling at this point. And Peter goes to Summer and says, "Oh, I'm Peter Flint. I was Warren's teacher, and I just saw him in a car accident. He was shouting your name, and I can. He really wants to see you." And he offers to take her to the hospital in his car. So she, has no reason not to believe this story. And as they're driving, he's like,
he's got this really crazed look on his face.
And she's like, "Oh, where is the hospital? Which hospital are we going to?" And Peter doesn't answer. And then suddenly he says, "Oh, I have something for you." And he hands her a white carnation. Pulls out of nowhere. And she's horrified by that.
Yeah.
So we suspect that maybe the last we see of Summer Blake.
Yes, I think that. And there were lots of things actually in this episode that were sort of foreshadowing this, especially when Summer did look at that photo of the strangled girl and said, "Oh, I must have looked like that." And that was kind of chilling that she was making a link between herself and this murder victim. So I thought it was interesting, and I noticed this that the last time Peter struck with the waitress that although he has these hallucinations that he's dealing with Kelly, there seems to be part of his mind that's lucid enough to know he's not dealing with Kelly at various points, because he was lucid enough to make up this whole story to Summer about Warren having an accident in order to lure her into the car.
Right.
So I think we're really seeing that Warren has become quite unhinged, but it's not just as simple as him thinking that he's dealing with Kelly and trying to get some kind of retribution on her. His mind is actually working in sort of 2 or 3 different ways almost at once, it seems like.
Yeah, it's very interesting what's going on in Peter's mind. And, you know, between the blackouts and the not knowing who he's with, and then, you know, being duplicitous on top of that. So I think we definitely have the start of a serial killer storyline here.
I think it'll be really interesting to see how this affects the other characters. So I imagine that if Summer is indeed the second victim of Peter Flint, that'll have profound implications for Gina.
Yeah, I think Gina's probably going to be the most affected by it, and she may, you know, this may be an excuse for another personality change for her.
Yeah, it might definitely bring out parts of her personality that we haven't seen before. And it'll probably have a lot of implications for the other characters in terms of how they behave and relate to each other. If you think of Kelly, for example, you know, she's actually been the person who just left 2 of the 2 victims. She's the last person to see them alive. So they're going to have to start eventually making some links between her and the killer. And I think it'll have definitely some impact over how the others treat her. You know, I can see
That's
Joe
true.
and Mason and Cece even becoming more protective of her.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, those are just a few ways that I can think of.
One thing I thought of is that as a possible Warren would be a suspect because he spent the whole day with Summer.
Well, and Warren was it was a very poignant near miss at the end where Summer leaves with Peter thinking that she's rushing to the scene of an accident, that Warren's been injured, and Warren comes rushing into the restaurant just moments later trying to find her.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be really hard on Warren. He's already got an awful lot of pressure with Mason pressuring him about the coins and all of the things going on with Lionel. Of course, Lakin's not there right now. She and Ted have gone off to take a break. So I think this will have a profound effect on Warren as well.
Yeah, I think Warren and Gina will be the 2 most affected by this particular murder, although in general, yeah, Kelly will be freaked out.
And just the whole community. I think this is going to inform a lot of people's actions. I can see a lot of, you know, like with the kids, will they be hanging out as much knowing that there's some crazy lunatic?
Lakin probably won't want to go hang out anywhere. Jade probably won't.
Yeah.
Even Amy.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts as to will Peter kill another cast member?
Well, I think that, you know, they say to really officially be a serial killer, someone needs to kill at least 3 people.
Oh, really?
So I could see him, if that's where they want to go, I could see him killing someone else.
I mean, if you think about people he wants to kill, Joe Perkins would be the first on the list, but with the way that his psychosis is, it doesn't fit, you know, the pattern of him thinking someone is Kelly. So Joe may not be a target. And it doesn't seem, well, I don't know. I don't know how last minute his plans are. Like, he may just see someone, you know, he's not planning this hours in advance. I don't think he was planning anything when he was hiding in the secret room. It seems like it just came to him at the restaurant. So.
Well, I think given this pattern, that the people who are in danger are blonde women. So We could, at various points, stalk Veronica or Eden, or, of course, Kelly's his ultimate aim. But we could also see him attack one or two other people who are more bystanders, just to make it more of a pattern.
Elizabeth is blonde too, and Jade, Marissa, and Amy.
Yeah. So,
but then again, Barbara was introduced one day and killed off the next. So obviously,
I mean, if Sally comes back in with highlights, that could be an issue.
Yeah, that. And then the last person she'll see will be Kelly.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, thanks for taking my shift.
So I think it depends. I think they're trying to build up Peter ultimately being a threat to Kelly. So they could do that with a whole string of people, or they could even do it just with one other person, who maybe isn't very significant to the cast, but just, build it up into creating tension around his relationship with Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
They could have a long sequence after that where he's just stalking after Kelly and she's vulnerable for some reason.
Mm-hmm. I think it might. I mean, Kelly's got her headache storyline to deal with too. It seems to me.
Yeah.
That probably will be going on. Probably dealt with first. So there may be some weeks of, Peter's, terrorizing the town before he finally goes after Kelly, and she deals with whatever it is, with her doll.
Yeah.
Storyline. I mean, they may end up converging those stories somehow, but we're not really sure where this doll storyline is going with Kelly yet. So
no, and that one seems to tie in more with Sophia's death. So
that's right. Yeah. And they probably will relate more with if Sophia comes back in a new disguise. Kelly may see her and start having more flashbacks because she senses, just like she did with Dominic, something in his eyes that was familiar.
So I think we'll see Peter kill at least once more, but depending on how they want to go with the storyline, I think it could very well be just a bystander character. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a main character.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a main character, I don't think they would ever kill off Eden.
There's that other new one too.
That's
Peter's
right.
Job.
That's right. So there's another potential candidate. Yeah.
He may show up and he may go to Lyman and say, "Oh, I need my job back."
Yeah.
And they'll tell him, "Oh, we just hired someone," and that may actually put him on her track.
Yes.
So that's another possibility.
And that would also affect other characters as well. I mean, I can imagine Amy being quite freaked out by that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's too bad Ted and Lakin aren't in town, because it would be the kind of thing you'd think Lakin and Jay would discuss now that it's two blonde women, with a similar MO.
Yeah.
You'd think that would be something that would be all the talk at the high school. So, well, I guess we'll see.
I don't think it would be someone like Eden, who's a very established character, and I think we have quite a long way to go with her.
Probably not Minx either.
But you could have a scene where, we also could have scenes to build up tension where Peter starts to have an episode with one of our beloved characters,
right,
and then gets, for whatever reason, he gets held off. Maybe they they suddenly go away and it passes. So that could be another way to build up the tension without actually murdering a lot of characters.
Yes. But we'll see if Sophia's blonde when she makes her way back to town.
Yeah, that's true. I think Sophia would be a match for him.
Yeah. Marcello would have bonk him on the head from behind, we think.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else about this week?
No, I think that's about it. I'm just really interested to see if Lionel got off that train and what happened with that and where that part of the storyline is going.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen Augusta for a while. She's probably not happy about, having Lionel jump his bail, so that's probably a whole thing.
She was probably there in that courthouse waiting for him to show up.
Yeah.
Trying to make excuses for him with the judge.
I think everyone will be much more concerned about Ted and Laken coming back, especially if there's all of these sort of sinister doings going on in Santa Barbara. And
They've phoned a few
concern about
times,
Lionel.
but they haven't
Yeah.
said where they are. Like
Yeah.
Eden says, "Oh, I don't know where they are," but they said they're okay. So
Yeah,
if they're still in Santa Barbara,
yeah,
I mean, could they be on the yacht?
yeah. So I think those are all, and of course, what happens with Peter and what happens with Kelly, where things go with her headaches, where things go. I mean, eventually there's going to be something happen between her and Peter, I'm sure. So where that
And
goes.
if we get a February wedding, that may be something Peter will attend.
I think Peter will be stalking that wedding. I wonder if this is what
if the wedding happens.
we're moving.
February sweeps, so
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm not. I think, as we've talked about before, I think the whole Joe and Kelly romance had a lot more urgency and passion, frankly, when Joe was being hunted, and it was this whole thing of whether Kelly still loved him and if she would betray him or not. And then it was the two of them together trying to fight to prove his innocence. And now all that's been settled, and they're starting to have, boring couple little bickering and fights. It's not quite as compelling, I think. So.
yeah, I bet Dan Witherspoon could have made it work.
Yeah, although I do think his replacement does have, like in the last episode, I was thinking that he does bring a lot of force to these arguments that I'm not sure. I think it would have been a very different vibe between
and
the
maybe
first
the
actor
writers are
and
writing
Kelly.
to that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably part of the reason the relationships changed a little bit too. I think Dane Witherspoon brought a certain sensitivity which really was compelling, especially when Joe was being hunted and rejected by everyone. Whereas the new version is a much sort of stronger, more stubborn character that I think probably plays better into the new dynamic they've got going.
The only other thing I can mention is they had the cast credits in this episode, but every version of it I've been able to find, the credits were truncated after Rubens, so I can't make any commentary.
I wonder
about
if it
any
ran long or
additions
something.
I don't know. It seems to be maybe the Russian version. So, anyway, I think my voice is about to give out.
Yeah.
I've had a cold for 2 days now. But, we'll be watching episode 119 of Santa Barbara, and we'll be back for week 25.
Sounds good.
See you then.
Bye-bye.